I did that for my senior year, and on graduation, I thought my responsibilities at the agency would end when I went to work for McDonnell Douglas in St. Louis. But it didn't work out that way, and eventually I was assigned to Canada, posing as a anti-Vietnam War engineer. Now, the agency knew that Fidel had gone around the island and built all these small dams. He actually wanted 2 growing seasons a year. Needed somebody to seed the clouds so it would rain and he could store the water. And that's where my expertise was, having been an amateur rocketeer and an aerospace engineer and all of this good stuff.
The Cubans were duped into believing the credentials I presented. There really was no other option of getting an American down there. After the October crisis of 1962, Kennedy said that we would never physically invade the island if Khrushchev would remove the ballistic missiles. So therefore, the United States was frozen into a policy of trying to bring Castro down from within, which meant disrupting the average lifestyle of the Cuban citizen, doing whatever we could to sabotage the economy, to discredit the revolution.
One way of doing that, of course, was to try to control the amount of food coming into Havana for distribution to the public. And if we could do that by puncturing tires on a truck loaded with tomatoes for the market, or if we could cause a truckload of whatever, onions or fresh fruit or meat to become putrid or be stolen or contaminated on the way into town, we would do that. And I remember one particular instance, a brand new secondary school that had opened up in the countryside was going to receive its week's supply of fresh milk. And we bribed the driver of the truck. We knew where he stopped to have breakfast on his route. We wanted him to take a few extra minutes so we could put cement powder into the milk. We declared war on school children. That shouldn't be the policy of the United States government. You don't win friends and influence people that way, declaring war on children and innocent civilians. A big mistake, but the U.S. government orders it and participates in it. And the CIA's goal eventually was to increase this frustration level to a point where there would be a civil revolution within Cuba to bring him down. I think from almost the outset I had reservations about what I was doing in Cuba. And that's because, just in general, I didn't enjoy harming people. And I didn't know the Cubans at the time, so I would rationalize myself that, well, this was in the best interests of my country. But as I got to know the Cuban people personally and ended up getting married to a Cuban, I started to change my attitude toward them very quickly. I think the most frightening thing that ever happened to me in Havana was when the Cuban counterintelligence people actually decided they had enough, and they came to my house and detained me. And eventually I was arrested and accused of espionage, even given a fake firing squad. And in spite of all the training I'd had and all the instruction I'd had that you don't get shot, you may be tried to be allowed publicity, you may even be imprisoned for a while, but eventually you'll be released and exchanged. You forget that when you're actually facing those rifle barrels and you're in a foreign country with no diplomatic mission and nobody there to speak for you. Your knees tremble and you lose bladder control. Very scary. Now, hindsight is something I think we all enjoy, and I just wish we could switch it around and use it as foresight. But in hindsight, yeah, if I could go back and change things, I'd have to go back 30 years to 1965 in my senior year and refuse the offer that was made to me by the CIA and take my chances with the draft and have pursued my engineering career. It certainly would have been a better life than what I had. I wouldn't have the memories that I have of the things that I've done to people and countries, and all of it in the name of the United States and under its flag.
For many years, I didn't even tell my friends I worked for CIA because I was embarrassed. It's colored my life. It always will. It's like a shadow that falls over my life all the time. I still, if I say anything against them, I turn around wondering if I'm being followed. I never even thought of joining the CIA. First of all, I thought I probably couldn't get in because it was considered the Cadillac of government agencies, and they mostly hired from Ivy League colleges. And I was just out of high school, went right to work for Veterans Administration. And actually it was the typewriter repairman came in to repair my typewriter one day, and he said, you know, you shouldn't be working here, you should be working at a nicer place. They test you a lot. Huge testing. I mean, when you put into this personnel pool, there are probably 2 or 3 weeks of tests where it's all day long, every single day. And there are IQ tests, there are personality tests. The questions that bothered me the most was when I took the polygraph test. And in the polygraph test, they ask you such incredibly personal questions. For instance, they asked me if I was a virgin. And I was 18. And I thought, what business is it of theirs whether I am or not? And I was rather embarrassed to tell them that I was, because I don't think any of my girlfriends were. I was raised very strict. There were very few women at CIA who were other than secretaries. It was very sexist. It was the male establishment, the white male establishment. I asked a couple of times why it was that there were no blacks there and why there were no gay people there, although they didn't call them gays in that time. In those days, I think they called them queers in those days. And they said because homosexuals could not be cleared because they could be blackmailed. They said that blacks couldn't be cleared because blacks just weren't, they were just still too primitive. They just weren't usually smart enough. And they didn't have the kind of background that white people had. I mean, I didn't think that much at the time because it was like sort of standard operating procedure. But when I think about it now, I'm really quite shocked how you probably would never get a job if you were black. I was assigned as a secretary in the audio surveillance division. They were experts on listening devices and hidden microphones and that sort of thing. I did also very often help the operatives get the documents that they needed once in a while.